So I saw Captain America: Brave New World at the theaters. Now, I was really excited for this movie. I also had my concerns with the fact that it was a movie that went through 3 or 4 rounds and multiple reshoots. It's the report that just came out. Sounds like it was a frustrating production. You have a director who directed Cloverfield Paradox, which was terrible. Was definitely have my concerns there too. And he hasn't directed much film wise. And it's coming off of Falcon Winter Soldier show, which was a show that I liked but didn't love. But I thought the trailers looked great, and I do love political spy thrillers, and it was like exciting to see them kind of do a movie like that in MCU again. Let me start with the positives. I think Anthony McAvoy is great in this movie. I think he brings tons of charisma, personality. I do love the character Sam, and I do think this movie does a good job of showing how he's different when it comes to the fact that he's a counselor for veteran soldiers. I mean, I even like the elements in the Falcon Winter Soldier show where he was talking to the main girl, how he kind of talked to the bad guy, and he wants to work it out. He's not like just gonna go head in to like fight the bad guy. Like he uses counselor skills, which I think that makes him different between Steve. I also like the fact that he's human when it comes to the idea that he it's more challenge for him. Like it's not easy for him as Steve. But Steve was a super soldier. He was a super powered person. And I like the idea of him being human. I like the idea of him not wanting to take the serum. I do like the idea they referenced the fact in this movie how much harder is him without the serum. Like I like the fact in this movie you see him doubt himself because he doesn't have the serum, and the fact that he feels like it's so much pressure to live up to Steve Rogers. So I do love the fact that you see him doubt himself in this movie, which is something Steve, which you didn't see that from Steve, where Steve was very confident in his which I love about that character. Like Steve Rogers to me is one of the best comic characters. I love his character MCU. He's to me was one of the big hearts of the MCU when it comes to him and Tony Stark. And Chris Evans just nailed that character. And look, do I think Sam is as like great as Steve Rogers? No, but I do think Anthony McAvoy is a great actor, and I do think he adds a lot of personality and heart to the character. Like I love both their characters, but I also think they're both different from each other. And I do like the fact that he's just a good guy, because that's one of the things I love about Steve is that you go back to the original Captain America movie, Steve was picked out because he was an obvious choice, because he was the guy full of heart who would jump into a grenade. He was a skinny guy. But people look at him and go like, oh, you can't be a soldier, like people didn't look at him as a hero, and he was picked on bully, which I love about the Steve Rogers character. And I think that's to me, I love the fact that's why Steve picked Falcon and picked the same character in Endgame was the fact that he's just a good guy. And sometimes I love characters a good person trying to help people. So to me, I do love the character Sam. I do like his version of Captain America, where yes, him being a good person, I can totally understand people saying that's similar to Steve because he was a good person, but I also think that's why Steve picked specifically the Falcon character to be the new Captain America. So, and like I said, I did think he gives tons of charisma and personality to the character. So I do personally, for me, I do think Anthony McAvoy does a great job in this movie. I just think this movie needed a better script and the dressing needed to be better. Because I'm going to get into some of the negatives with the story and all of that. One of the other positives is that I think the actor who plays New Falcon, I can't remember his last name, Danny Warnes, was I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, but the new actor who plays Falcon, I liked him in the Winter Soldier show, and I do like his character that he's kind of high energy and excited, and towards the end he gets injured really badly and realizes that he made a mistake and that it's more serious. This being a superhero, how dangerous it can be. And I think him and Captain America, excuse me, him and Sam, Anthony McAvoy's character Sam as Captain America, I think they have great banter. Where I really thought they had great chemistry. Where I felt like they had a fun banter between each other. So I think he's great in the movie too. I think Harrison Ford does a great job in this movie. Like I know there's been reports that he was grumpy on set to work with, but I also he's talked about like Indiana Jones and Star Wars, where it makes it sound like he didn't enjoy those playing those characters either. So like overall when it comes to his performance in this movie, he does a great job performance wise. I felt like it felt like the William Hurt character from the previous movies. I feel like he did a great job of honoring William Hurt and taking over the role of Thunderbolt Ross. So, you know, if you if he was grumpy on set, I think overall when it comes to his performance though, I didn't feel like he like phoned it in or anything like that. I felt like he gave a solid performance. I think the CGI for the Red Hawk looks good. I do wish Red Hawk was in this movie more. He's only in for 9 minutes of the movie towards the third act. I do wish we saw Red Hawk more in this movie. But I think the CGI looks pretty good for Red Hawk. And I think the actor who plays Isaac Bradley, who was in Carl Lubin, which I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. Actually plays Isaac Bradley, the Captain America that was thrown in prison. That you met his character in Falcon Winter Soldier. I think he's great in the movie too. Like I really love his character. I love the friendship between him and the Sam character in this movie. I think they have a great chemistry too, where I really buy them as friends. I like the fact he's kind of like helping Sam train. So I love the Isaac Bradley character. I think him and Anthony McAvoy do a great job performance-wise in this movie. Where I really love the friendship between the two characters, and also I like I like the friendship between him and the new Falcon too. I think there was some fun moments with those two characters. And then I'll say another positive about this movie is that I did like some of the flight Aston aerial scenes in this movie. I thought some of it was cool and good. I am getting some negatives with the Aston in this movie, but I think when it came to the flight scenes, when it had to do with them flying around doing the Aston, I thought they were good, entertaining enough Aston scenes. And I do like the fact we go back to that celestial being that popped out of the ocean in the Atonas and the idea of introducing antimantium. Like, I do like the idea of the antimantium being introduced as, like, past from a celestial being god, because obviously that's not from the comics. That they created antimatter in a different way in the MCU. Was I like the way it was created, like the idea of it being from a celestial being god. I do buy that would be probably more indestructible than vibranium because it's coming from a celestial being, a gigantic celestial being god. They don't, I can't really say where if it's stronger than vibranium because you haven't seen anybody use it in this movie, and it does feel more of a setup for future stuff. But I didn't have a problem with the way Adaman was introduced in this movie. Like, I do like the idea of it being from a celestial god being. And I'll say another positive is that, and this is kind of going to be a negative too. I do like the idea of seeing like characters like Betty and Alita from Incredible Hulk again, like connecting some of the threads from that movie, since I know that movie's considered kind of like the black sheep in the MCU, and we haven't had any solo Hulk movies since then. So I'm gonna get some negatives with that though. But I think the idea of seeing some of these characters again, I think could have been really good. But now I'm going to get into the negatives with this movie. And the negatives with this movie is that the plot feels like a poor man's version of Winter Soldier, where it just doesn't capture that intense spy thriller where you really feel the stakes and the tension like you did with Winter Soldier. And especially the Aston too. Like the combat Aston in this movie feels very uninspired. And this movie feels very just mediocre directed. Like the directing in this movie feels very mediocre to me, and the plot just feels very uninspired. And like you've been there, done that with Winter Soldier already, and that movie I feel like did it way better. Where the plot had you on the edge of your seat, has tons of energy, and the hand-to-hand combat scenes in this movie just feel very like poorly directed and uninspiring. Where just they feel at times really slow and choppy. This is nothing about this movie. This movie went through like 3 or 4 hours of issues. You can tell there were scenes in this movie where I could see the green screen. Like even a scene that then where one of them I can think of is like when he's talking to when Sam's trying to calm down Red Hawk, and he's one of these just seeing where there are like trees and you see blossoms coming off the trees. It's like it just I can see the green screen, and this movie just feels so choppy with its editing. A lot of times in this movie, like the hand to hand combat scenes feel just poorly choreographed, and they just feel really like they're moving slow. Like you look at Winter Soldier, the action in that movie feels intense. It feels really great, like fast paced. You can see the action. It feels like you're on the edge of your seat with the action. In this movie, it feels poorly choreographed and just very choppy. The editing just don't ask and isn't particularly very good. Like I said, it feels very mediocre directed. And even though I like the idea of seeing these characters from Incredible Hulk again, it kind of feels like they're just in it to tie up loose ends. Like the character of Betty, which I was excited to see Liv Tyler again. She only is in one scene in person in this movie. Like you haven't seen earlier where Harrison Ford's character Thunderbolt Ross is trying to call. And you hear and he's talking to her on the phone, but you only see the actress who played Betty for like one scene in the movie. And I think that story could have been interesting of him trying to be, since he's president now, he's trying to be a better person. I think that could have been interesting. The story of him and Betty. I think that I would have felt more, but they just don't really fuss it out enough. And this movie, I think it's the shortest Captain America movie, I believe. This movie needed to be longer. Because I felt like they also felt like they were trying to throw in too much in this movie. And I was excited to see the character, the leader again, because obviously 2008 Incredible Hulk movie set up that character. You see the camera going on in his head. He was going to turn into a leader like in the comics. I feel like he's wasted in this movie. Like you haven't seen his character since 2008, and that was set up for him to become the leader. And he's a very much a big Hawk villain. So I do think that's a real choice to have him in this movie. But I was intrigued to see his character again. But he's just wasted in this movie. He's not a very interesting villain, and the whole story that Thunderbolt Ross has been putting more gamma on him and using him, keeping him in prison and using him. Just feels very shoot in this movie. Like it just feels like it's kind of random, and it just feels like they're just forcing it in there. And his character just isn't very interesting as a villain. He's just kind of like, he just. I just feel like they don't give his character a whole lot to work with in this movie, and it just feels like he's just kind of there, but not really used all that much, and just like I said, wasting this movie. I also really don't like the design choice of the leader. Like I can totally understand the leader from the comics is a hard design to translate into live action. It definitely could end up looking goofy, but the way he looks in this movie just feels very lazily done to me with the design choice. Where it's like doesn't I feel like he doesn't look as green as he should be. The whole like you see his brain a little bit. Like I can understand have him have a big head might look goofy. I get it. Like his character is definitely a hard character to translate into live action, but it just feels very like the creative design they went for with the lead in this movie just feels very uninspiring and just lazily done to me. Like they didn't really put any effort into it. So I'm not really a fan of the way the leader looks in this movie. It just did not work for me. And like I said, his character is just wasted, and that's how I feel about a lot of these characters. A lot of these characters feel wasted. Like there's the actress who plays like a formal Black Widow in this movie. I feel like she's wasted in this movie. She doesn't really add anything. Like, you could take a character out, and I feel like it doesn't change anything. And I just didn't really care much for a character. And then the actor who Giancarlo Esposito, who plays some henchman villain. He's wasting this movie too, which sucks because I think Giancarlo Esposito is a great actor. Like he was in Breaking Bad, he was in The Mandalorian as a villain, and to me I feel like he was so wasted in this movie. Like he plays a villain henchman, and he just doesn't like I think he's like the leader of some society, and like I don't know. I think in the comics he's leader of some society, the character, and I'm not too familiar with the character, but I just feel like they don't really give his character a whole lot of depth. Like there's not much to his character, and he's a very forgettable villain. And I just feel like he's just kind of wasted in this movie with Suska Junior Espino is a great actor, and I was hoping it would give him kind of more of a meaty role, and he just feels like he's not a purpose in this movie. Same with the Black Widow kid, though. I feel like she's just doing there. And when it comes to character Betty, I feel like she's just not in the movie a lot. Like I said earlier, I feel like they underutilized her character, and I think I would have liked to have seen her more in the movie. Which is why I think this movie should have been longer too. It just feels like they're throwing in a bunch of stuff, but it just feels too short to flush it all out. So overall, this movie is passable. I don't think this movie's terrible. It's not one of the worst MCU movies. Like, to me, I still think the Marvels, Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, and Thor: Love and Thunder are still the worst for me. Like, those are the three movies that I really don't like in MCU. So I don't think it hits those levels. But this is, like, just a very mediocre, okay movie. And it sucks because, like I said, I think you had a lot of potential with this movie. And I think Anthony McAvoy can. I think if you just give him a better movie to be in, with not where you don't have like choppy editing and a movie I think will do multiple rounds of reshoots and a better script and a better director. I think this movie. I think he could have had a great Captain America movie, and instead this feels like a mediocre directed movie. The script just feels very mediocre. It feels so choppy, and editing like choppy when it comes to editing in this movie. The accent is just very like uninspiring, forgettable. Most of the accent in this movie, I think there's a lot of characters I feel wasted or underutilized. So it's a very okay movie. It's a movie that I would say wait to watch it when it comes available streaming. It definitely is the weakest Captain America movie for me when it comes to modern movies. Like it's not the worst one. 1999 Captain America movie I think is still the worst. And I know there was like two TV Captain America movies back then that, from what I heard, was pretty big, but I never saw them. So it's not the worst Captain America movie, but it is a very. I would say when it comes to the modern Captain America movies, this is the weakest among those. So that's my thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. Until next time, movie fans.